Pastor, all the furniture in the house now belongs to the church. As I recall, you asked for donations for the women's shelter. I don't think you'll need the mattresses from the house, but everything else is yours." My daughter stood frozen, staring at her mother. If looks could kill, Janice would have suffered a slow and agonizing end. "Hi, Sweet Tooth," I greeted cheerfully. "Hi, Daddy," replied Casey, the best daughter in the world. Casey had just turned 28 yesterday, and this wasn't the celebration I had planned. But Janice had brought him into my house, and because of that, I decided to accelerate my plans. "Girl, the house is yours. Take good care of it," I told Casey. "Don't forget to replace the water heater. I'll handle everything else before you move in." From the bedroom, a woman's voice called out, "Hank." "Yes, Janice," I replied. "What's going on, honey?" "Just settling some things before I leave. I'll be with you in a minute," I answered calmly. Walter, my son, stood silently nearby, watching. "I'll be waiting for you outside, Jack," Walter said pointedly. "Oh, and don't even think about running." Curious, Jack walked to the window. His jaw tightened when he saw about 20 uniformed officers outside the house. They were lingering around, their presence unmistakable. Jack was boxing like a rat. "Excuse me, Jack," I said, turning to him. "Since you're a bull in this business, I'd like you to meet some folks who specialize in handling bulls by the horns." Jack's defiance faltered as I smirked. It might have been petty, but I found it amusing. "Jack, this is Agent Parks from the FBI," I continued, gesturing to a stern-looking man. "And next to him is Agent Carlson from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They're here to offer you a choice." I let the words sink in before delivering the punchline. "You can confess to stealing guns and money from my pawn shop. In that case, you'll be arrested and leave with them peacefully. Or," I gestured to the window, "you can take your chances on the street. The choice is yours, Mr. Big Bad Bull." Jack's bravado visibly crumbled. Turning to Janice, I said, "Now, Janice, I'll answer your questions in a moment, but first," I gestured for my attorney to step forward. Jake, my trusted lawyer, held up a stack of papers. "Janice Wilson," he said formally, "you are being served with a subpoena. Let me introduce myself. I'm Hank Wilson, and my wife, Janice, is currently preoccupied with another man. For lack of a better term, I've become a willing cuckold. How I got to this point is a long story, but don't worry. I'll get to it soon. Just a second, though. The doorbell is ringing. Stay there, Janice. I'll get it," I called out. I opened the door to greet my rather unusual group of guests. "Good afternoon, everyone. Please follow me." Who was with me, you ask? Let's see. Janice's parents, my parents, are kids. A pastor, a rabbi, my lawyer, her lover's wife, a cameraman, her boss, her lover's boss, an FBI agent, and a BAF agent. Quite the ensemble, wouldn't you say? I led the group to the staircase. Janice is upstairs. She's a little busy right now, so let's keep the noise down, I said with a smirk. As we reached the bedroom door, I opened it wide. The scream that followed was so loud, I thought my eardrums might burst. "Hank, you expletive, you're going to pay for this," Janice shouted. I stayed calm, a smile playing on my lips. "Will I pay for this, honey? Will I?" And then her lover, let's call him Jack, decided it was his time to shine. "You expletive, I'm going to kick your ass for this." Jack roared as he stumbled out of bed, heading toward me. But before he could get too far, a new figure appeared in the doorway. It was his wife. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Looks like you've been busy. Mr. Wilson here stopped by our house earlier and showed me some, let's call it homemade footage. Not the best quality, but I got a good look at you." She raised a pistol, a trusty Model 1911.45 ACP, and smiled coldly. "I wouldn't take another step if I were you. You know how much I enjoy shooting small critters." Jack froze in place, his eyes wide as he began searching for his pants. "Are you looking for these?" his wife asked, holding up the crumpled garment. The look in her eyes told him he wasn't going anywhere. With the theatrics settled for a moment, I turned to the pastor. "Pastor Wills, you'll be needing a bed soon, won't you?" "Janice," I continued, turning to her with deliberate calm, "it's time for some business." My attorney, Jake, stepped forward and handed her a stack of papers. "Janice Wilson, here's your copy of the divorce petition," he said, sliding it across the table. "And here's a check for $35,000, I added. "Under the terms of the prenuptial agreement you signed before our wedding, you're entitled to keep your car and your clothes. That's all." "I need your wedding ring, please," I said. Janice hesitated for a moment, then looked down at her hand. With a sigh, she slipped the ring off and handed it to Jake. "You have 45 minutes to pack and leave the house," I added, my tone firm. Jake turned to her lover, Jack. "Your clothes and car are in the driveway," he said. "Also, your wife has hired me as her attorney. The alimony trial is next Friday. Until then, all checking and savings accounts are frozen. Can everyone leave so I can get dressed?" Janice asked, exasperated. "Wait, Dad," Casey interjected. "Stay. Let her say her piece. I'll stand by the door." Janice rose, began dressing, and turned to me with a pleading tone. "Hank, it doesn't have to be like this. If you give me a chance, I'll make it right. I know I overreacted, but it wasn't that bad." I looked at her, my face unreadable. "Janice, I've been begging you for years to take a trip with me, to go somewhere, to try something new in the bedroom. Every single time, you turn me down. But then Jack comes along, and suddenly you'll do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. Where was I in all of this?" I paused, letting the silence linger. "I'll tell you where I was. I was at home, or I was at work, while you were off with him. Did it ever occur to you to include me in any of it? You never wanted to try anything with me. Instead, your buddy Jack came by, and all I got was, 'Expletive you, Hank.' Well, now it's my turn. Expletive you, Janice." Janice glared at me, her tone shifting to defiance. "Hank, just so you know, I'm fighting this divorce. I deserve more than what you're giving me. And a 30-year-old prenup? It's useless. I'll have it overturned." And she did. Janice and her attorney managed to get the prenup voided. The judge ruled that times had changed and the agreement was outdated. A new court date was set, and the reality of what I'd lose became clear. It's funny how a wife can betray her husband, sleep with whoever she wants, and yet the husband ends up the one losing everything. But I wasn't about to let that happen. Jake, my lawyer, informed me that the court would likely award her half of everything. I thought it over and made a decision. "Drop the divorce," I told Jake. "I'll handle this myself." He sent Janice a notice informing her that I had withdrawn the divorce suit. She was ecstatic. So ecstatic, in fact, that she celebrated by sleeping with Jack yet again. But things didn't unfold the way Janice had hoped. I had made my choice. It was cheaper to keep her than to divorce her. And, as it turned out, I was absolutely right. I sold the pawn shop for $625,000. Between that, nearly $300,000 in the bank, and about $400,000 in investments, I was sitting on a good amount. I gave Walter, my son, the candy apple red Corvette and $100,000. That was enough for him to start his own business. As for Casey, my daughter, she got a house, $100,000, and an extra $50,000 for a future grandchild. I hope she doesn't wait too long. That was 8 years ago. Casey told me recently that Janice spent half of the $30,000 I left her trying to track me down. They haven't spoken to each other since. At one point, Janice even tried to get the money I'd given Walter and Casey. She took it to court, claiming I had no right to give it away. But the judge ruled against her, stating that since they were my children, I had every right to do as I pleased. After that, I cashed out or sold everything else. In case you're wondering, Janice and Jack are still together. Though, from what I hear, it's more of a survival arrangement than anything else. After serving 3 years in prison, Jack was released, but I think he sometimes wishes he'd stayed longer. Jack, or Mr. Ass as I like to call him, now pays his ex-wife just under $5,000 a month in child support. Those payments will continue until their kids turn 18 or 23 if they go to college. Janice and Jack also have 2 kids together now, age 5 and 6. Janice works 3 jobs to make ends meet. At one point, she got into a fight with Jack's ex-wife, Mrs. Ass. According to Janice, Mrs. Ass spat in her face, prompting her to throw a punch. Unfortunately for Janice, the security footage only showed her hitting Mrs. Ass, not the alleged spit. She lost the case and ended up owing $25,000. Adding insult to injury, because Janice and Jack lived together, Child Protective Services started deducting $300 a month from her paychecks to help cover Jack's child support. Fun fact: in the South, if someone doesn't pay their child support, their partner's wages can be garnished to make up the difference. As for me, life has been pretty good. I'm a willing cuckold, sure, but I've moved on and learned to enjoy my freedom. I opened a new pawn shop in Manila, where people seem to love renting things to pawn shops. Walter and Casey came to visit me recently, bringing their younger siblings along. I'm proud of how well they're doing. Some of you might wonder why I didn't retaliate against Jack when this all started. Truth be told, I wanted to, but Jack was a cop. My hands were tied. So I did the next best thing. I set him up. I may be a willing cuckold, but I never said I was stupid. Moving to the Philippines was the best decision I ever made. Here, $100,000 feels like $1 million in the States. My modest 25-square-mile ranch has a beautiful creek for fishing, and I'm surrounded by people who make me happy. Oh, and about those people, I have 3 girlfriends now. Yes, 3. They're young, beautiful, and yes, they're with me for the money. But they make me happy, and they're honest about why they're here. We all share a home, and life is good. Looking back, some might judge me for how things turned out. I hate cuckolds, those who are unwilling anyway. But for me, being a willing cuckold was a choice. A calculated one. Janice might have loved me once, but in the end, she loved him more. And that's okay. I've found my happiness, and I've learned that the only real justice is the kind you create for yourself.